Okay.
Going to start recording now. We're recording.
Welcome to Butterflies of Wisdom, everyone. If this audio sounds better than the normal audio, that's because Madeleine and I are using Zoom. And so without further ado, I'm going to let Madeleine take it away and explain to us what her journey is and why she developed the parenting program that she did.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Wynn, for having me. I really appreciate it. As you said, my name is Madeleine Davis. I'm the creator of the parenting system and the stress-free family. And the reason that I began the parenting system and created the system and the stress-free family program was really because I had a dire need in my own home to calm the chaos that was happening. So I had been a serial entrepreneur my entire life. I had decades of experience coaching and consulting and creating businesses and things of that nature. And when I had my 3 kids, and they're very close in age, and I had 3 boys, one right after the other, and I had thought that the journey from being an entrepreneur to becoming a mompreneur, and I became a mompreneur basically by having 3 kids, right? I thought that transition was going to be seamless. I really hadn't given thought to how that would affect my life and my business and the way that I thought and things like that. So I had a very, very bumpy, challenging transition. So what happened was that I became quickly overwhelmed and exhausted from the day-to-day parenting stuff, all the stuff of parenting, right? So I was, nagging my kids all the time. I was yelling at them to get things done. I was rushing them through different things. They were late for school all the time. Evenings were very, very stressful. Our mornings were, I was scrambling all the time, trying to get them to school on time. They were late, actually, almost every day to school. When they did go to school, they weren't prepared with what they needed to be successful for the day, which of course is not just stressful for them to not have what they need, but it adds a whole other layer of things for me to do, right? Because then I needed to go back home, pick up their stuff, bring it back to them at school, bring back their lunch boxes and their soccer cleats and everything. It was so much, and there was so much clutter in my own brain. Just the negative thinking and the beating myself up and why couldn't I get it together? Why was this so hard for me? It was just very challenging for me. And, I found that moms can be very hard on themselves and sometimes with one another. It could be very hard when you're not operating at the level that you really wanted to be. And in essence, what happened for me was that before I became a mom, I had this vision of the type of mom that I wanted to be, right? I really wanted to be, I'll put air quotes around this, but I wanted to be a together mom. Like those moms that just, it's really easy for them and it's really relaxed and fun and the kids are happy and it's stress-free. And I just wanted to be a great mom. And I had a vision of the type of home that I wanted to raise my kids in. And that was the complete, 180 degrees difference to what was happening in my life, the type of mom that I was and the type of home that I was raising my kids in. And basically, I had a really bad day with my kids. Well, not with my kids, but with my life as mom, I should say. And I spent a morning really scrambling, trying to get them out the door on time, trying to get my kids to school. And when I did get to the 3rd school, I realized that I had been wearing 2 different shoes that whole time. And I was in such a fog and I was so tired and so overwhelmed that I hadn't realized that. So when I did realize that, it was like the walk of shame home. I had to go home, kind of like if it was in my face, every step I took in my face that I was not doing well as a mom, that I couldn't get it together, that I wasn't showing up in the best way that I could for them. Everything about our communication was logistical and operational in nature. And even with that, and by that I mean like do this, do that, hurry up, go to sleep, time for dinner. Just there wasn't really a lot of talk about hopes, dreams, and fears, right? And I also was wearing 2 different shoes to drop my kids to school.
Yeah.
So nothing was going right. It was just all falling apart. And I was really trying to hang on, and I was white knuckling it, trying to keep it all together. And what ended up happening was I had a really serious talk after being really hard on myself the whole day with my sister. And which it's great to have an amazing sister and somebody who'll really be there for you and champion for you. But I really broke down with her, and I was crying, and I just said to her, like, I just don't understand what's wrong with me, why I can't do this, why I wasn't born with that together mom gene, why I wasn't, I'm just not able to do this. And I know I'm smart, right? I know I'm smart. I have all these businesses. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a coach. I'm a consultant. I can do all of these things as soon as I leave my home. But in my home with my family, there was a huge disconnect. And what she said to me was, you may not have been born with the together mom gene, but you were born with the CEO gene, right? And for me, I understood that because I had spent decades, right, as a strategist, right? I'm working with optimization and efficiency and building teams and moving people towards a goal. And, it just all of that really made sense for me. And what I did was I began to create a system for myself. So not for anybody else. So it wasn't called the Stress-Free Family at that time, right? When it was just me trying to create a system so that I could, for myself, look, act, and feel like the together mom that I really, really wanted to be. I wanted to figure out a way to become that mom that I wanted to be and to raise my kids in the home that I wanted to raise them in. And that's what I did. I created a system for myself. When other moms noticed the change in me, in my home, and in my kids, when they started to notice, they started to ask me what I was doing, right, at home for me, myself, and my kids, so that they could do it too. And that's how, over time, the Stress-Free Family was born. So that's my story.
So you developed this system out of desperation.
Yes, desperation is the right word.
Yeah, let's just face facts here. 8 a.m., rolls around, you don't know what to do. Nothing. So
right.
You developed this system, the Stress-Free Family, out of desperation. Now,
yes.
Okay, we're doing this interview on September 12th, which is the second week back to school.
Right.
So what would you say to those parents who have those kids in preschool who are just trying to get them out the door and not being a crying mess when I get to school? The reason why I say that is because I taught preschool for 11 years, and I gave that up in May 2017, so May. And by the time it hit 10 a.m., when the kids would come to drama, I would see meltdowns coming from the classroom because maybe mommy and daddy had a bad morning.
That's right. That's right.
So what do we do? I mean,
right.
I'm asking from a teacher's perspective.
Right.
I'm not asking from a parent's perspective. Help us all, Madeleine. Help us all.
Right, right. So I love that you're saying that, Wynn. And I've actually worked with a lot of teachers that have asked me to come in and speak because of exactly what you just said. It's so on point. So when we are scrambling in the morning as moms and we don't have it together, and the kids get to school late without what they need, without, knowing what their next steps are, haven't been yelled at or nagged at or rushed in the morning. What happens is that moms are really just dropping the kids off at school, and they don't really understand what's going on once they're at school. So what's happening is that the kids are very anxious. They're very rushed. It's very different, when you get to school with grace and ease, with everything that you need, that what you're having, you had a great breakfast, you had a great interaction with mom or dad or with your siblings, and, you had a nice, calm, peaceful morning. When you get to school, you have your homework, when you open up that backpack, there's going to be lunch. It's not like you open up your backpack and you realize you forgot lunch. I mean, when a kid realizes that they don't have what they need, that is so anxiety producing. It's not just that now they think they're not going to eat. They're also thinking to themselves, again, I forgot. Mommy's going to be upset with me. Again, I forgot my jacket. Again, I forgot my cleats. Again, I forgot my jacket. What's wrong with me? I mean, there's so many different things. When they don't know what's happening for them after school, who's going to pick me up? What's my after school plan? These are all things that kids think about. And it's very anxiety producing. It's very hard to focus on the task at hand at learning. You're learning your numbers, your letters, your math. I mean, I work with moms who have kids mainly between 3 and 11 years old. And obviously, as the kids get older, there's more kind of higher functioning skills that are being thought about. But what I would say is, and it is like the first few weeks of school here, is nail down those routines. Routines are paramount. Say that?
Say that again, because I want my fan base to hear what you just said. Say that again. I heard you loud and clear, but I want you to say that again to my fan base.
Absolutely. Nail down those routines. And what I will say to you is that I call my program the Stress-Free Family because it reduces stress. Basically 100% of the operational, foundational, logistical functioning of your home will be stress-free. So not the stress of, parenting at large, right? So you're still concerned about like technology and social media with your children and things like that, right? But I'm talking about the foundational, operational, like if you were going to have an operational manual for your home, right? That I take care of. And I say to moms, if we nail down your routines in an effective, optimized, efficient, customized way for you, do you believe that would reduce your stress by 20%? And usually I ask them, how much do you think that will reduce your stress by? And I get numbers like 75%, 80%. It's unbelievable. Just that one piece. So my formula is a 5-part system. It's an integrated, complete system. But one entire module, really centers around nailing down those routines. And the funny thing is, you could say like, oh, just nail down the routines, right? And I could almost hear moms listening right now, opening up a tab, getting on Google and downloading like a routines checklist from the internet, right? Like I could see that happening right now. And the thing is that does not work. Nope. That is not going to work. And if it could work, then all the millions of moms that have downloaded one routine checklist after another, and there's thousands of them, would have a calm and easy home. But like crafting a routines for that is optimized for your home and customized, that's really efficient, that really works, that really, really works, that's repeatable. Teaching your kids how to do that, how to anticipate their next move, their next task, linking those activities one to another in their brain, that is not a downloadable like worksheet, right? That's not what that is. That is learning how to implement, how to roll out routines that your kids will learn how to do so that you don't have to say every day, don't forget this, don't forget that, go do that, next you have this. Like you want to be able to roll them out in a way that your kids learn how to do them. And then, you also need to have some system of rewards right? A system of rewards and consequences that somehow integrates with your routines in your home, where they are basically rewarded and motivated to learn how to do the routines and learn how to build ease into their life. And when you have easy mornings and relaxed evenings, and by the way, those kids that are scrambling in the morning and getting nagged and yelled at, I could guarantee that their evenings are a mess. Like nobody has a morning that's a mess if their evenings aren't a mess. If their bedtime isn't like an hour or 2 hours of pushback and negotiation and, you know, whining and nagging and threatening and things like that. Like, I would bet that those children that have been, you know, having those type of like chaotic mornings are also living with that in the evening. So it's really, you know, a holistic approach. So you need to have the whole day, the whole day. And I will just tell you, when as a teacher, I'm sure you know that transitions are the most important part. Where
you just got to my nemesis of every single day. Even though it's my third grade class, transitions are hard. Now these are third graders, they understand CP, but my God, they still can't do it.
Yeah, the transitions is really where every single thing can really fall apart. And that's really an area where most moms do not focus. And those downloadable like worksheets or, you know, routines or whatever, they're not focusing on that, because the transitions are where things fall apart, right? You need, they need more care, right?
Yeah.
So that's just what I would say. Is that the routines, and that's why I focus on that first in my program, because I really want moms to get like relief right away, and nailing down those routines just gets you relief right away. It's nice to have your kids go to bed on time, you know, get a great night's rest, you set yourself up, you know, for a great morning, you know, packing up everything they need and you know, just having a beautiful, relaxed, peaceful start to the day. It just, you know, it's the momentum. It just keeps you going. Like when you're on your way to school at drop-off or work, if you work or whatever the mom does, is like you're already feeling successful and your child is feeling successful. So who doesn't want to start their day like that? Everybody wants to, you know.
I do. I might download your program for me. And so how do you, I personally might, how do you feel about laying, let's say, little Susie's clothes out the night before? How do you feel about that? Is that a yes?
That's a big yes. So in routines, which is, you know, it's a whole module, so we're not gonna have time to go over that now, but if you want, I would be happy to come on and, you know, do a whole training if you want around something one day. But
let's do that.
But I do want to give some value here and leave your listeners with some information. But I'm all about successful mornings start the night before. And I kind of laid that, you know, the seeds, the groundwork for that by saying, if you're scrambling in the morning, you didn't set yourself up the night before. And, you know, I did share, I'm very open and honest with everybody. And I did share how I wore those two different shoes myself personally when I took my kids to school. And I will tell you that the very first thing that night, after, you know, spilling my guts out and crying to my sister that night and deciding to CEO my home, is I laid out my clothes for the next day. Is I said, I will never, ever wear two different shoes again. I'm not going to be a hot mess, you know, scrambling out the door, looking like, you know, what the cat dragged in. I'm just going to take, you know, 2 extra seconds the night before and decide what to wear. Right. And I also, to be honest, I streamlined my wardrobe. You know, that's another thing about optimizing and being efficient, right? I streamlined. But in the routines, there's a very specific way. It's not just laying out clothes. It's a very specific way. The clothes is one piece. I mean, you want to have all of the pieces necessary laid out and done in a very specific order, so that it's efficient and so that it makes sense. So it's got to make sense in their brain, in your brain, in their brain, right? So if it makes sense, then it will be remembered. It will, be cemented in their brain. If it's kind of like where they're ping-ponging all over the place, back and forth in different rooms and picking up this and then getting the other thing, those are all different points of distraction. And in the same way that transitions is the, you called it the nemesis. I love that. Not having an optimized routine is that very same way, because that if you offer different points of distractions, children will get distracted.
Yes, they will.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I have a lot of families, and not that there's a focus on this, but I have a lot of families that live with ADHD. Their children have ADHD, or the mom has ADHD, because my program is so linear, right? It's so linear. You do this, then you do that. There's no room for error.
And it's so funny you say that, because I grew up with a schedule. I grew up with a mother who was into scheduling like this, small. Unfortunately, I lost her in 2010.
Oh.
So I'm so used to a schedule, it's not even funny. So I typically do a schedule on Sundays for myself and send it to my dad, because he needs to know what's going on. And I think that has helped me so much to organize my life,
right,
to organize timing, to organize these interviews, to organize everything. Because that way I get up, I know what I'm doing, I know how I'm doing it. Yeah.
Exactly. That is such a gift your mother gave you. It is a gift that we give our children, because what happens is that because you grew up that way, it is now part of your fabric, right?
Yeah.
It is part of who you are. And when you know what to do and when, that is actually very comforting. It's very comforting to not have all of these questions. And I'm not talking about open time for creativity or downtime. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you need to get something done. So when you need to get to school, or when you have to do your homework, or when as adults we have projects that we have to execute with deadlines and timelines and expectations and things of that nature. So I'm not, this is a short interview, so it's not, we don't get into all the meat of it, right? But I'm not talking about not giving kids free time, downtime, time for daydreaming, time for drawing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about routines where you need to move them from one task to another, where you need to do that. Like school starts at 8 or 8:30 or whatever time it starts for that child, regardless of whether or not they've had breakfast in the morning, right? Or had a late night the night before. So we need to get our kids to school on time. And there's tons of research that shows that kids who come to school late or without breakfast, or without having the things that they need, late, absent, things like that, that they don't do well in school. They just don't do well in school. There's failure rates that are very, very high, very high. And I think the number is 10. I think if children miss more than 10 days out of the school year, so in New York City, where I live, it's 180 days of the year.
In Colorado, I think it's about 90 days. I'll look that up for Colorado. And because people are looking out for these kids. And so if they don't show up, the next thing you know, they knock on your door saying, "Where's your child?"
Right. Oh, absolutely. But also if they're late to school, they're missing that first period class. They don't have that time to take that breath, to organize their notebooks, their pencil, to sit down, to take that breath, right? Their commute to school is not a relaxed time. So if they're scrambling to do their homework like on the bus, right, because they didn't do it the night before, or they're just finding out about homework, they forgot to do it, and now they're asking their friend on the seat next to them, let me copy your homework.
Yes.
So you work with preschool children, right? So they didn't have homework. There's kind of other things around there. But as the kids get older, they're going to have homework. Even if, if they start off with just reading like a page or 2 pages or 10 minutes and things, so I started my program 10 years ago, right? My kids were 2, 4, and 6. At this point, they are 12, 14, and 16, right? So my kids, they have between 2 and 3 hours of homework a night. So imagine if
typical.
It's typical. And imagine if I hadn't given my kids the gift of organizing themselves, of learning about time management, about learning how to balance their life, right? And think strategically, what comes next, what should be doing, what needs to be done, right? How would they be able to manage that and really have a full life, right?
I don't know.
Right. And I will tell you this also, that I have noticed from my lifetime to my kids' lifetime. So that difference in generation is that the demands and the expectations on my kids are so much more than when I went to school. And I'm sure our parents would say that, right, about us. But my kids' workload, the expectations is, at least 10x. The difficulty to get into college, multiply that. It's an exponentially more complicated, more difficult, more expectations. And if their brain is cluttered with scrambling and not getting stuff done and not being able to nail down what, the basic day-to-day logistical operational stuff of living, right? Which is what we're talking about, routines, rules, things like that. Then how are they going to be able to focus on all that the world is throwing at them, right? That's we have to make it, like our job as parents, I think, is to really set up our kids to be able to be productive, happy, well-functioning, well-adjusted human beings that can exist in this community. And there's all of these things that we want for our kids, but it starts at home with the foundation. It really starts at home.
It does. Yeah. Yes, it does. And Madeleine, where can the people find you? And yes, you guys, I am bringing Madeleine back on to do a total deep dive of her program, because this fascinates me as a teacher, and it will help me organize the kids that I work with. And I'm actually going to send this one to my bosses and say, we need to implement something like this, or at least stick this in the parent newsletter, because I'm not dealing with chaos anymore.
Right.
I like ease. I like easy stuff to deal with. I'm not dealing with cranky kids anymore.
Right.
And I think that's the whole point, is if you would have a bad evening, you're cranky in the morning.
It's really hard to reset. It is really, really hard to reset. And, that's the thing, is like trying to create a life of calm and ease. Like I'm always, reminding my kids, like, we want to get to school with grace and ease. 15 minutes early with everything you need is on time. Yeah. 15 minutes early is on time. That's the thing, because, if they get there early and they have a little bit of time to socialize, that's great. That's great. That's great. So, and believe me, when they grow up and, get jobs and work, with people, that kind of mentality is going to go very far for them. Very far for them. So if your moms would love to connect with me, and I would love them to do that, if they are interested in the stress-free family system, they can find me at www.thestressfreefamily.com. So it's just thestressfreefamily.com, right? And there's a couple of free resources they can grab, like how to stop nagging your kids and like a little rules checklist. But more importantly, they can schedule a session with me, a free strategy session with me. And when they do that, they can book some time with me on my calendar, and we can talk about what's going on in their home, and I can let them know how the stress-free family can help with the challenges that they're dealing with right there. And they can learn all about the program and the delivery of it and how they get access to me, and that would be it. They just schedule a call and we'll talk about it, and I can sign them up right there. It'd be great.
Well, and as I said to you guys, I'm bringing Madeleine back on to do a complete deep dive of the program, because I think as teachers, we need help more than ever from the parents. And I think this program will help parents less fight us, if you know what I mean, because parents are more supportive if their kids are calm and they have a clear understanding if the kid isn't in the background screaming.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I believe very strongly that the home and the school must be a partnership, right? We got to be on the same page, right? We have to work together because our goals for the kids have to be the same, like the advancement, right? Their education and their well-being, right? So fighting the teachers is like just goes completely against the grain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We really need to enlist one another for help,
Yeah.
and have it be a partnership. And I can talk to you, about that and my perspective and on that as well. Anytime you want, I'll come on. I'm happy to share and to talk to you, and the moms that you serve.
I would love that, and I would love for you to do a deep dive with me one of these days live on the podcast about your program. And now, before I let you go, I know you have a couple questions which we talked about beforehand, so I'm going to let you ask me a couple questions.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, I would love to do that. So what I wanted to ask you is, and I know that you do, that you created this podcast, but what made you decide that this was the direction that you wanted to go? Like, why a podcast of all things to get your message out?
Number one, I can't type to save my life. I use Apple's Siri dictation like there's no tomorrow. And yes, Apple doesn't sponsor this podcast, even though they should. And I wrote a book when I was 23 years old, and this podcast stems from that book.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. That's very interesting. So within the book, and I guess you said I could answer two questions, but this just prompted me to ask you something else. Why was the book about creating a podcast? Or that was just...
the book was about my life, and it could still be found on Amazon. You guys, win, WIN, capital I, WIN, could still be found on Amazon to this day. And the book was about my life with cerebral palsy. And what happened was people started asking me, how do you do all this with cerebral palsy?
That was going to be my next question, is what challenge? That was my next question. What challenges have you come up against because of this, due to the cerebral palsy, and how are you doing it? How are you managing?
Well, without my schedule and without my calendar and without emails, I would be a mess. So without my schedule, I would not be doing the stuff I'm doing. And so the challenges with cerebral palsy, and if I don't get a good night's sleep, I cannot talk. Literally, I cannot talk. So that's one of the challenges of having cerebral palsy, is if you don't get enough sleep, just like anyone, you are a mess. So that's
Right.
one of the challenges with cerebral palsy, because I have muscle spasms too that I need to be conscious of.
Okay. All right. I did not know that about cerebral palsy, but I could tell you that everybody needs sleep. I mean, sleep is super
Yes,
important, right? Super important. So,
yes.
wow, that's very interesting. Good for you.
Well, I thank you for coming on my podcast and explaining the stress-free family. And yes, you guys, as I said to Melissa, we're going to do a deep dive of the stress-free family. We just have to set that up with all she's got going on and I've got going on. But I appreciate Melissa's time, and I hope that she has much success from this podcast interview and get a few new clients based off of it.
Thank you. That's so nice. It's been a lot of fun. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye now.